Welcome to EVTN News. I have a lot of stories to cover today, so I'm going to try to move along kind of quickly here. Last week I didn't have very many stories, and unfortunately they all waited until this week. I wish they would space out a little bit more, but that's how the news cycle works. We're going to start with the Synod. It's a really bad thing, of course. So, a member of the Swiss delegation to the Synod's European Assembly, Helena Jeppesen-Spuler, gave an interview earlier this month. I believe she's a voting member of the Synod. Yes, she is. But I don't think she was appointed by Pope Francis. It looks like she was voted on by Switzerland's Synod delegation. She admitted that she is in favor of the ordination of women. She acknowledged that there is a tension among the Synod participants on the issue, but expressed hope that the Synod delegates would make progress nevertheless. She said, I believe and sincerely hope that something will be possible in the women's question. There are now a large number of bishops who are ready to take clear steps. The priesthood of women will not be introduced immediately, but the diaconate of women should be seriously discussed at the assembly in Rome. We currently have to be satisfied with such partial results and at the same time continue to work persistently. Asked what she expects from the final Synod document, Jeppesen said that only a draft version has been shared with the voting delegates so far, which is more than what most of us know, but now we know. It contains strong positions on the ordination of women and other unnamed issues. So there you go. The Synod documents contain strong positions on the ordination of women. So you're going to have to be prepared to write to your bishops and call and ask what their opinions are if this does get passed. We got to be a step ahead of the modernists at this point. I mean, you can clearly see what they're trying to make happen, which, I mean, it could possibly happen. All right. Archbishop Mark Coleridge of Brisbane, Australia, has proposed an exemption for Indigenous priests from celibacy and said it was necessary when he said, no way you're going to recruit a celibate clergy in those cultures. Sounds a little bit racist, doesn't it? That's another thing that's coming up, and I believe Coleridge is on the Synod, is in the Synod. I mean, you got to get the most radical people from everywhere, and but yes, that's one way they're going to try to introduce married priests through these indigenous cultures because there's no way they're going to accept celibacy. Well, whenever you have bishops who hate it, then why do you expect? How can you expect to evangelize cultures when you yourself are against celibacy? I mean, it's a very obvious question. You know, someone like Archbishop Lefebvre who goes to Africa and inspires countless people. I mean, you could probably count them. There's probably quite a few. He converted, I don't know if I would say a continent, but he was certainly very influential in the evangelization in Africa. And he didn't say, "Oh, these people, they want married priests. We need to adapt our faith to the culture because they'll never accept the faith." Well, here's a problem: when you water down the faith, then of course they're not going to accept it. When you're trying to adapt the faith of their culture, then they don't. Who cares? Because they already have their culture. It makes no sense. Oh, you've heard about the fires on Hawaii. So maybe some of you have seen this picture that in Hawaii there was a photo of a row of houses that were burnt, and then the church was not. as the church in Maui, Maria Lanakila, which is Hawaiian for Our Lady of Victory, and it was the only church on the island that offered the Latin Mass. So take that for what you will. German Archbishop Georg Ganswein, the former private secretary to the late Pope Benedict XVI, has made his first public appearance after being sent back to his native Freiburg, Germany, with no formal job. Last Thursday, Ganswein attended the presentation of the German edition of his book, Nothing But the Truth. In July, the Archdiocese of Freiburg, led by Archbishop Stefan Berger, B-U-R-G-E-R, announced at the meeting between the two, Berger and Ganswein, that after a meeting between the two, that Ganswein would celebrate masses in Freiburg's cathedral beginning in the fall, but he was not given a permanent job. Ganswein is 67, and he has been unemployed since returning to Freiburg in June, when Pope Francis sent him packing from Rome with no new assignment. So he's banished from the Vatican. And he did say in his book, he said that Benedict was really disappointed by his... Benedict was really disappointed by by Pope Francis cracking down the Latin Mass, and apparently he was fired for that. So there you go. All right, let's see here. 12 traditional Catholics held a reparation prayer at the Church of Our Lady of the Incarnation on August 3rd in protest of an LMNOP Mass. This was during World Francis Day, or World Francis Week, or World Youth Day, or whatever you want to call it. There was an LMNOP Mass taking place in a Catholic church, and they were protesting it. They actually prayed during the Mass out loud. And so police removed the group, and its members now face criminal charges for disrupting an act of worship. Rafael da Silva, the protest organizer, told LifeSite News that the police and the Portuguese Secret Service are now tracking their phone messages and activities. However, he currently does not believe that they will be put in jail. He instead thinks that the police are just trying to scare people to stop the movement from expanding, and that they will end up with a fine at most. So we'll see what happens, but hopefully these guys, it's an act of sacrilege, LMNOP Mass, and so hopefully these guys will not receive any fines or anything, any citations or anything like that, because they're just defending the Catholic faith against these heretics, rotten perverts. And anyway, speaking of perverts, 2 Catholic schools in the Diocese of Worcester, Massachusetts, have made their disagreement with policies set forth by Bishop Robert McManus regarding gender nonsense. So I reported on this a while ago. Administrators of St. John's High School and Notre Dame Academy made public a letter to the bishop in which they indicated they would not adopt the new diocesan policy, which requires treating students according to their biological sex. Xaverian brother Daniel Scala and Notre Dame sister Patty Chappell said they would maintain their existing policies, confident that they uphold the principles of Catholic moral and social teaching while respecting the sacred dignity of the students entrusted to our care. If you were concerned about their sacred dignity, you would refer to them as they were created, not as what they pervert. Because the two schools are operated by religious orders, they are not immediately subject to the diocesan policy, but the two religious apparently wanted to make their disagreement with the bishop a matter of public record. So it goes to show. Now this is a bus nun. One of them's a bus nun. The other one's probably a member of a LMNOP religious order. I mean, clearly, because otherwise, any religious order with any integrity, um, with any claim that they have a commitment to the Catholic faith, would suspend these um, pervert individuals for supporting this disgusting behavior. All right, now I get into the big story. The Texas Carmelites. So they released a statement of the Reverend Mother Prioress and Chapter Monastery of the Most Holy Trinity, Discalced Carmelite Nuns from Arlington, Texas. So I've been talking about this feud, and it's been, it's provided a lot of drama, and I really didn't pick sides, but I wasn't sure if they were traditional, but I'm going to read this and then I will comment. So I'm not going to read the entire statement. It's kind of a long statement, but I'm going to read certain paragraphs which I think kind of highlight the sentiment. They said, therefore, because the salvation of our souls is our first duty before Almighty God, in order to protect the integrity of our monastic life and vocation from the grave dangers that the continued abuse to which we are being subject there threatened, sorry, which we are being subjected threatened, we hereby state that in conscience we no longer recognize the authority of and cannot have further relations with the current Bishop of Fort Worth, which is Bishop Olson, or his officials, and forbid him or any of his officials or representatives to enter our monastery property, to have any contact or relations with the monastery or any of its nuns or novices. No one who abuses us has the current Bishop of Fort Worth, as has the current Bishop of Fort Worth, has any right to our cooperation or obedience. In these circumstances, we must state clearly that we remain utterly faithful to the doctrine of the Catholic Church and to affirm the Pope and the Bishop of Fort Worth, whomever they are today and whoever they may be in the future, shall always be prayed for in this monastery, most especially in the canon of the Mass. So it's not so much a declaration of independence as basically banning him from the monastery. In addition, the chapter has resolved henceforth the better to render unto Almighty God the glory that is his due, and in order more profoundly to enter into the contemplation of his sacred mysteries, to celebrate the sacred liturgy, the holy sacrifice of the Mass, the divine office, the sacraments, sacramentals, and other rites, according to the older forms of the Roman Rite. That's great. According to the traditional Discalced Carmelite usages. So they're celebrating the Latin Mass. All right. They have received a statement of support from Vigano, who's doing his own canceled priest and religious thing. But I mean, will they receive a priest from Vigano, or will they receive a priest at all? I mean, they're traditional, so there you go. Now, Olson, and I knew this, so I say Olson seems to be a very impulsive type of guy. As soon as the Carmelites release anything, Olson just fires back as much as he can. And so as soon as they released this document, he released a statement, which included the text that said, thus it is with deep sorrow that I must inform the faithful of the Diocese of Fort Worth that Mother Teresa Agnes thereby may have incurred upon herself a latae sententiae, i.e. by her own schismatic actions, excommunication. So I figured he would do that without Vatican approval and not let the process play itself out. I figured he would, because it seems as though that's what he's been doing the entire time, is jumping the gun, overstepping his boundaries. And but the point where he said she may have incurred upon herself a latae sententiae excommunication. Well, Pope Francis may not be Pope. Bishop Olson may not be Bishop. So the Carmelites could be correct, using that type of speculative wording. But he had to get his words in. He couldn't have just waited and let the process play out. So I think, with the nuns, saying the Latin Mass, I'm kind of starting to take their side. You know, I think people took the nuns' side before because Olson just kind of ran in there and started like ranting for half an hour or something, and I think a lot of people were against him. But now, because they're doing the traditional Mass, I'm kind of seeing they're finding the Catholic faith, and that's great. So we'll see what happens as this continues. I wonder where they're going to get a priest, though. Will they get a canceled priest to say their Latin Mass? Because otherwise, they're not going to have Mass if they don't get a canceled priest. All right. The National Seminary of Costa Rica required seminarians to take a week of intensive sexual education that promoted disordered topics and featured obscene topics. One instructor has been Dr. Margarita Murillo, a well-known Costa Rican perv psychologist who promoted LMNOP and other disordered acts. One priest who worked with Murillo in Costa Rica is Father Eduardo Jara, OFM, Franciscan. He is currently a prominent official in the Archdiocese of Washington, where he has brought Murillo to lead a workshop on sexuality at a local parish. So the Perv Network is alive and well in the Archdiocese of Washington. And I'm not even going to read that stuff because it's probably inappropriate for this channel. But if you're interested to see what the Rotten Seminary has, you can read the link in the description. I believe I just titled the article Rotten Seminary, so you can look it up for yourself if you really want to see what all perv stuff they're talking about. And more perverts. On August 18th, Pope Francis appointed wealthy Eugenio Zaffaroni, age 83, as a director of the newly created Fray Bartolome de las Casas Institute for the Research and Promotion of Social Rights, which amounts to immigration propaganda. Zaffaroni is a former judge of the Argentine Supreme Court, 2003 to 2015. He's aligned with Kirchnerism, which is socialism, the evil spirit behind the introduction of abortion in Argentina. Oh, great. A promoter of drug legalization and LMNOP fake marriages. Oh, boy. Yeah, Francis connected to a pro-abortion politician. Isn't the first time, right? I mean, look at the Pontifical Academy for Death. This guy is, anyway, created some fake institute and appointed this pervert. But that's not the worst thing. An investigation by perfil.com revealed that in 2011, 6 of Zaffaroni's apartments in Buenos Aires' upper-class neighborhood Recoleta were used for prostitution. So that's the character of the individuals that Pope Francis promotes. Are you surprised? Are any of you surprised? Don't pretend you're surprised. All right, I am pulling up this information. Cleveland Diocese, so I reported on it last week, I believe, how Cleveland Diocese, the Bishop Malesic, established a shrine, diocesan shrine, and will bring in a religious order to say Latin Mass. Now, the rumor on the street is that's the Institute of Christ the King. It's a really nice church. And now the Cleveland Diocese is going from 12 traditional Mass sites to possibly just one, maximum of 3, starting November 1st. Here's an update while I was on vacation. This isn't me, this is someone else on Twitter. I received news that Bishop Malesic, in his effort to continue the extraordinary form, it's Latin Mass, in the diocese. This is a long one. Okay. In the diocese, for those whom it will benefit, has petitioned Rome for the Mass to continue at St. Mary Parish in Akron, beginning November 1st. At that time, the Latin Mass will cease at St. Sebastian and St. Paul parishes. St. Stephen's in Cleveland will be the other site that is petitioned to keep the Mass. So there will just be 3 locations: St. Elizabeth, St. Mary, and St. Stephen. The main church, however, will be St. Elizabeth, where it is intended that the Institute of Christ the King will minister. This is all please bear in mind, this is all pending permission from the Holy Father. Okay. As for St. Mary, which is where the church, one of the churches where it will be, where it will be open. It is very accessible and visible right off the highway. So there you go. It was at St. Mary's in the Extraordinary Form first had a home in Akron. Occasionally, when there was a conflict in the liturgical schedule, the Mass would be celebrated at St. Sebastian. When St. Mary went through a period of being closed, the Mass came to St. Sebastian on a more permanent basis. There is sadness as this era of our history is coming to an end. I know some will follow this Mass back to St. Mary, but I hope others will choose to make their spiritual home here. Oh, well. Okay, so basically the churches are being shut down and they will fade away into obscurity because Latin Mass people aren't coming, and that's how it works. Okay, so great, right? Another Latin Mass, more Latin Masses are shut down. All right. I got other stuff too. Okay. There we go. Oh. All right, Bishop Howard Hubbard. I actually talked about him very recently. He was the controversial retired Bishop of Albany, New York, and he died Saturday after suffering this week from a stroke. He was 84. He was accused of sexual assault several times, advocated for the ordination of women to the priesthood, and criticized Catholic teaching on sexuality. He also entered into an invalid marriage earlier this year after requesting and being denied laicization. But that isn't the craziest part. The craziest part is, after Hubbard's death, a statement was published by some media outlets which identified it as a statement from the Albany Diocese. The statement praised Hubbard as humble and witty, but fearless in the face of controversy, and while deeply respectful of church teaching and tradition, profoundly independent in his thinking. A spokesperson for the Albany Diocese told the Pillar Saturday that the statement was not published by the diocese, but it had been instead written and distributed by a public relations firm contracted by Hubbard before his death. So he had a public relations firm. He paid a public relations firm to write his obituary and pass it off as coming from the Diocese of Albany. Isn't that insane? He was so concerned with his he was concerned with his reputation. What about eternal life? Are you concerned about eternal life? That's unbelievable, really unbelievable. I don't even know what to say. I mean, would McCarrick even try to do something like that? I don't know. All right, Laudato Si, Part 2. Francis announced he would write a follow-up to Laudato Si. This is the Francis Church. Documents must be constantly updated to adapt the changes in the modern world. And I wonder, so maybe some of that money coming from the UN or the World Economic Forum or whoever, he's taking that to heart and writing another encyclical about earth worship, which isn't Catholic. And I don't know. I mean, do you really want Francis to write on something else? I mean, write about the rigid people? I mean, he kind of rants about them every day, almost every day. um, this one, though, in particular, so it's this is my speculation, so don't take this isn't coming anywhere else, but Humana Vitae, a lot of a lot of modernists disagree. Well, all the modernists disagree with Humana Vitae. This one might try to overturn it. I mean, if he does write this, that's a little bit concerning, with the world population and that kind of rhetoric. It wouldn't be surprising to see something like that. And I'm sure there's plenty of bishops who would be happy to get rid of Humana Vitae. So you heard it first. All right, get to the comments. Leave a comment before I shut this thing down. We don't need women deacons unless they plan on bringing back full nude baptisms. They don't need deaconesses. They just want an excuse for women to preach. Speaking of perverts, Bishop Butterball against the nuns says it all. By the way, Ferndale is taking Olson's side. Okay, they ran a hit piece against Olson a while back. Church Militant ran a hit piece against Olson, so now they're his friend. Now that the nuns are saying the Latin Mass. Yeah, that's Church Militant, or what do you want to call them? Novus Ordo Militant. Francis is surrounded with perverts. Tell me who your friends are, and I will tell you who you are. Latin Mass is shut down. Vatican News Service starts news service in Latin. Wow, okay. Yeah. Keep Francis busy traveling so he doesn't have time to change the church. Well, he hasn't changed the church. We belong to the church. He hasn't changed the church, and he can't change the church. Anything he declares will be voided in the future. I wish Francis wrote about what he knows. What is that? Oh, I hope he doesn't write about what he knows. I'm sure he knows plenty of things about the Jesuits. I mean, I'd like to see names for sure. What does he know about McCarrick? I'm sure he hasn't written about that. Yeah, this news came pretty fast. Lots of news in the lots of news this past week, and I see there's more on the way. Maybe not related to these stories. Maybe related to these stories, maybe not related to these stories, but we will have. I mean, I expect that we will see a lot more news coming in the near future, and I already think there are a few stories that I need to compile for next week, just to see what's going on. I didn't have, I work on Mondays usually, and so I don't always have time to fully research my facts. And as a result, sometimes Monday's news gets pushed back to the next week. I mean, if it's breaking and I can tell you right on the surface, then I will, but otherwise, sometimes it's pushed back. But anyway, I try to bring you some news that might be helpful to you to know, and hopefully it is. So, yeah, and it's really humid here. So, I'm going to call it a day. Until next time, thank you so much. Okay. Another comment. I just hope this new encyclical discontinuation will not continue to say air conditioning use is a sin, because it's over 100 degrees here in Nebraska and air conditioning is a lifesaver. Well, I'll tell you what. Continuation. New encyclical continuation. So I'll tell you what. You should probably cut off your air conditioning because of the new doctrines of the Laudato Si. And unless you are a politician that can fly to climate meetings in a private jet, then you really can't say anything about it, and you really should be forced to buy either buy a Tesla or um, ride a bike everywhere. Oh, and no kids. That's harmful for the environment for whatever reason. Whatever. Uh, what about eating hamburgers or something? Because beef is bad for the environment. I don't know. Um, be a vegan, I guess. Don't eat animals. I'm not really sure. Never learned to drive. Never learned to ride a. Oh well. Uh, you really should. Maybe you could skateboard or ride a scooter or something. How are we gonna get around? Even public transportation. There's buses. That's not good for the environment either. So I think what you need to do. We need a climate lockdown. So maybe Pope Francis is going to promote climate lockdowns where you can't go anywhere, can't drive anywhere to save the environment. I don't know if, I mean, are people really that crazy that they would buy into that? I mean, I know that there's some on the left who want to control people using that type of narrative, but people aren't. I don't know. This nation isn't dumb enough, are they? Is the United is the world are the people in the world dumb enough to buy into that to actually go along with a climate lockdown? Are they really that stupid? I don't think so. I really don't. And after the first lockdowns, you're disagreeing, Ryan. People are that crazy. Well, okay. Buses don't run Sunday here which is a good thing because that means the bus drivers get the day off. 15-minute city prisons. I don't know. I'm saying that I don't think they are. I don't think they're dumb enough to buy it. I mean, I think there will be revolts. And how many police officers would actually enforce that? People can't drive places. I just I don't think that's a possibility. I mean, I don't even think you get away with it in like the I don't even think you get away with it in like the communist European countries. Yes, they are that stupid. Okay. Well, I can't even talk about those things, but you can tell some of my neighbors get nearly all their food delivered to the door for the first 2 years of virus stuff. Hey, well, here's the thing, because I've talked to people who aren't really so much into the virus, but they said they order their groceries because they pay. This actually sounds interesting. So they pay a flat fee, but it's like $100 a year or something like that. But they order groceries twice a week. So they order their groceries twice a week to have them delivered to their door because it saves them time going to the grocery store and it stops them from impulse buying things they don't need. So like snacks, that's not healthy. But you don't have to buy snacks whenever you're picking it out online and saying, "Oh, I just need bread and milk and whatever." That's it. You're not buying any chips, you're not buying any cookies or candy or anything. So you're you're eating healthier and you're getting it delivered to your door. You're saving time, and for something like $100 a year, you're getting there's 52 weeks in the year. Is that right? 52 weeks. And if you're getting it delivered to your door twice a week, that's less than $2 a trip. So it's crazy to think about, but if you utilize it effectively, it's not so crazy, you know. If you're terrified of the virus, that's one thing, but if you're saving time, if it's saving you time running to the grocery store and you're not doing the impulse buying, then you're actually saving money in the long run, and you're saving so much time, and that's just one way to look at it. I mean, you get what you pay for, and if you utilize it effectively, it could be a really really helpful um, really helpful service. Okay, this has been EVTN News. Oh, I see a mom with 10. I could see a mom with 10 kids using a delivery service. That would be really helpful for large families because then they wouldn't even have to go to the grocery store. Then they could spend their time doing laundry and other things that large families do, I guess. All right, thank you so much for watching. This has been EVTN News. Until next time, we are the laity, and we will not be silent.